I obviously am very well aware of it, and I saw little bits and pieces here and there. I decided I'm not going to watch it because it's 3 hours of my life, um, and I figured that I would kind of get enough
Yeah.
out of just kind of all the hullabaloo that's going to go on social media about that anyway. So by all accounts, it seems like it was a good interview.
Yeah.
Got a hell of a lot of views. Um, but by the same token, I'm also at this point where I feel like it is such a farce, this whole election thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know why we're still continuing to make as if this is, you know, really about the country and about the best outcome for the country, as opposed to, this may just as well have been a boxing match
Yeah.
that people betted on or something like that. It's really how I feel about it because the the lying, it is so blatant at this point in time.
Yeah.
The skullduggery, I don't know what else to call these things.
Manipulation.
Yeah, the manipulation, the anyway, it also kind of goes back to that thing about it. Look, the amount of money and the amount of time and effort and so on that is spent on this farce, um, it is laughable.
Yeah.
I can just imagine that there are some world leaders that sit and look at this thing and go, geez, well, no wonder
Yeah.
things are as. Anyway, but I think it's unfortunately, like we said before, in some of our discussions, it's like we we want all political systems to be as democratic as possible. But we've got to sit here and go, well, very few of it is, and there is very little chance
Yeah.
of any of it actually being very democratic, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, the one thing that he mentioned is it's a two-party race. Like, there's no point in voting for any of the other candidates. And I mean, they all eventually end up
correct,
dropping out and backing one of the two anyway. They,
correct.
yeah, yeah,
So I must say, one of the things that I certainly appreciate about this thing, where we are at this point, is that it seems like the transition team that Donald Trump has put together, you know, the fact that he got RFK Jr. to work with him, Tulsi Gabbard, who was um, a potential candidate and somebody that I kind of respect quite a lot in terms of just the level headedness and kind of sticking to the facts, etc., etc. Vivek Ramaswamy. Um, and then obviously Elon Musk's involvement in terms of from a government efficiency point of view and so on. And the fact that they are doing all of this work and kind of putting this transition plan together
hmm
with their own money. It says to me a couple of things. These people are serious about what they want to achieve, first of all. And secondly, is that Donald Trump did learn the lessons first time round
yeah,
in terms of, listen, keep your cards close to your chest, because the deep state will fuck you over at every possible opportunity. Um, anyway, but I'm sick and tired of the. I can't wait for next week to have this
yeah,
election and get it over with.
Oh, but it
Because
won't
you,
be
you
over. I mean, they're already talking about all of the challenges, the legal challenges
shenanigans.
that are going to come out after the
Oh my word!
elections, whichever way
Look,
it goes. And
I cannot believe how backward that process, that voting process is. You can, I mean, people can vote. People vote without showing ID. The early vote process is
Mhm.
so, um, I don't know. Um, yeah, it really is. And look, again, the Republicans at this point, they are saying, listen, let's make voter ID compulsory.
Mhm.
Let's make in-person voting one day. Let's make it a public holiday. Let's,
Mhm.
you know, forget about these voting machines,
Yeah, they're
count the
saying hand
votes.
count. Yeah.
Yeah. So you only get one party asking for this thing, which sounds like the most fair and verifiable process. And the other party saying, no, 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 we don't
Mhm.
want that. Does that not? Anyway, the whole thing is corrupt and it leaves a bad taste.
Yeah.
I
But
think for the
yeah.
rest of us, it's so important to kind of get to this point. Well, okay, cool. What happens next?
Mhm.
And for all I care, they can rig the thing. They can, whoever. If but there's going to be consequences.
Mhm.
There, there's going to be consequences if Donald Trump becomes president in terms of the geopolitical. That's kind of like where we are sitting. And there will be consequences if Kamala becomes the what, and exactly what those consequences are, we don't know yet. But I
Yeah.
think for the rest of the world, we are really interested in kind of getting to that place where we know who we're dealing with
Yeah.
and what those policies will
It's going to
be.
be interesting. Actually, when this goes out, we'll already know who the president of the United
Yes.
States is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, interesting times. Interesting.
Look, it is interesting times. I think from an economic point of view, I think that there are some of the things happening in the markets and so on, which is kind of like um, outside of this process, and the election doesn't necessarily influence it that much the way that I understand it. So it's like, listen, irrespective of who wins this thing, um, there are certain things in terms of the markets in general and the financial health of the world, in terms of bond prices, in terms of interest rates, in terms of et cetera, et cetera. Now, some of it are actually kind of like, yeah, it depends on who wins, that is going to, because the one party says that they are keen to tax X, Y, and Z, and the other party says, no, we're going to lower taxes, but we are going to increase tariffs, and,
Hmm.
and maybe these things will, but but I think that there's this other thing that's sitting there in terms of saying, listen, these are things that are in motion, or these are the facts on the ground, etc. I don't know. Did I hear correct on the weekend that there is a little bit of tension growing between China and Taiwan, or is it just more bullshit because some people have an agenda that they would feel benefit um, by manufacturing some kind of a tension between
Interesting. I
China
didn't
and
hear
Taiwan.
that. I didn't hear that, and I did put the news on at some point this weekend, and majority of it is the US elections and the Israel Gaza, well, Iran, I mean Lebanon Israel now war. So
Jeez,
just
yeah, it is. Anyway,
yeah, that's pretty
so
much all the BBC is showing on the news at the moment.
yeah, and we know that you cannot trust them
Yeah.
to present you with facts at all. Um,
Well, I'm just
anyway,
so much more aware now of where certain news or programs or whatever, where they lie,
mm,
who they agree with or who they're supporting. It's just become so obvious. Whereas I used
yeah,
to think, and I think we've spoken about this on here before, that the news was impartial, that they show both sides of the story, but they're always skewed one way. They might get someone who
100%.
talks about the other side, but the way that they deal with that person is very different to how they deal with someone who's on their side. And yeah. So,
You know, I was thinking about that over the weekend, and I have this feeling that I don't know where, kind of like in the history, more or less what decade or wherever to put it, but there was a change that happened where things became so um,
divisive.
well, divisive, partisan, I don't know what,
Mm,
but where the truth left the building,
all right.
or that the incentives to report truthfully
Yeah.
were changed. So again, irrespective of what country you're in, you're going to have, whether it's newspaper, radio, television, you have these mouthpieces of political parties. Anyway, so I'm thinking about, at what point did it change? At
Mm,
what point did it become a so? And I don't know exactly where it was. And I feel like maybe this disgust that I'm feeling at the moment for all mainstream media, because it's so easy to see which side they're on. Just looking at their
yeah.
reporting. You know,
Yeah.
but maybe I have to watch them for a week, and without having any context or whatever, you'll know. Okay, cool. So you support this party. Um, anyway, maybe that disgust that I'm feeling now because we have access to these other platforms, um, and more people actually show the credibility in terms of being completely um, unattached to any political party or any viewpoint or whatever, but
Yeah.
just being kind of like pure journalists. So maybe it's just because never knew how manipulated we were,
Yeah.
or maybe it's me never realizing how manipulated I was.
But I think we've also spoken about this. It's like almost that thing that you're not allowed to sit on the fence or have an opinion about two different things or have two different opinions. Like you have to pick a side and then wholeheartedly be part of that group and agree with that group. So it it makes it very difficult for even for especially for public figures. I've seen a lot of people um who kind of they get put in a box because they say something about the right that they agree with, and then they get branded as a right wing whatever. And then that's what they are forever. And then anything they say to kind of
Mm.
show the other side, they get told, oh no, they're just trying to defend themselves because they're this right wing conservative piece of shit, whatever they are. I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
very like you're not allowed to have different opinions on different things if they don't fit into that box.
So do you think that people are starting to push back against that? Do you think that, um, given that we have, for example, a platform like X, where
Mm,
that's fine, you can say whatever you want, you can say, obviously within those kind of
mm,
reasonable guidelines and so on and so forth, but you can be on any of these issues, you know, um, you can say what you believe, and other people can then come and comment
yeah,
and so on.
yeah.
So it seems like that is the best version of the truth that we have at the moment.
I also think some of these independent podcast hosts, I mean, Chris Williams and Stephen Bartlett, Lex Friedman, Konstantin Kisil. I mean, they all seem to be branded as right. Actually, maybe
which
not
is
Stephen Bartlett, but they want to get a mixed view, and they seem to interview everyone quite fairly that they get, but they don't
they
seem to
do.
get a lot of the other side. They end up with a lot of people that are more right.
Well, yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that because the the latest guest on Lex Friedman was Bernie Sanders. And they don't come more left than Bernie.
Hmm.
Maybe Stalin was a little bit more left than Bernie, but um, it's kind of like in that vein. And exactly what he said. Now, both, well, no, but there's a host of these podcasts
Hmm.
that have publicly said we would like all viewpoints. Come and talk to us. The All In guys, they had Donald Trump on their Lex Friedman had Donald Trump on his podcast. Joe Rogan. Now all of these guys got massive audiences, and they all publicly invited Kamala or the other side to come
Hmm.
on the show and be treated with exactly the same respect, etc., etc. You know, um, and they they don't want to engage.
Yeah.
I think purely because they know that they will be exposed
Hmm.
because you're not going to get, um, some of these guys that we are talking about that we mentioned here to be given a set of questions and say, you ask these questions and nothing more, nothing less.
Hmm. And we can
So,
edit the podcast before we publish it.
yeah,
Move some
yeah,
things around.
exactly.
Cut some
So
statements
maybe,
out.
yes. So maybe that whole thing about what is it, CBS, maybe
Yeah.
that whole thing by CBS and that kind of like edited thing and so on is maybe the thing that prompted me to start thinking about, hey, hang on, for how long have they been doing that kind of thing?
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
just never knew any better. Because by and large, you have to trust people's integrity.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, it it is a little bit of a joke. But one of the things that I'm trying to be very aware of is that one has to be extra vigilant these days as
Yeah.
AI become smarter and it becomes easier to manipulate video or to create something from scratch. Um, and I think that going forward, it's going to be very interesting. I think that this is the last American election where the mainstream media is going to have a major influence, simply because the other platforms,
Hmm.
whether it's these podcasters that we're talking about, whether it's X, whether it's TikTok, whether it's YouTube, etc., I think these things have kind of proven that they've got much bigger audiences, got much more of a variety of opinions. So that's going to be interesting to see how that in the future plays out.
Yeah. And kind of live fact checking of statements, because if you post something on Twitter and someone has an argument for it and they can find the evidence, they can pop it right
Correct.
up there. Yeah.
Can pop it right up there, yeah.
Yeah.
And even if it's 24 hours later, it's
Hmm.
not like, the news cycle has moved on and everybody has forgotten about this and we can.
Hmm.
Um, so so I kind of like that part of it.
Yeah.
I like the idea of of people sitting down and having a conversation with not just a journalist, but with um, so just kind of going back a little bit in the beginning of this election cycle, the All In Pod invited all of these guys that were in the primary to come on their
Who's the
podcast, and they
all-in
had quite a
pod? Just
few of them.
remind me.
So the all-in pod is David Sachs, David
Yes,
Friedberg,
okay.
Chamath Palihapitiya, and Jason Calacanis.
Mm-hmm.
So predominantly democratic or Democrats in their kind of viewpoint. David Sachs is the only one that was kind of like a Republican from the beginning. I
Mm-hmm.
think, where they are now, it's like 50-50 because Chamath also, I know for a fact, um, participated in a fundraising event for Trump with
Mm-hmm.
David Sachs. And I think he stated that he is going to vote for him. Um, and the other two, so very balanced,
Mm-hmm.
four highly successful people. I mean, three of the four are billionaires, I think. And the fourth one is very well on his way. Um, Generally very level-headed. One of them is Jason Calacanis. He is so um, so democratic that even though he sees everything that they're doing wrong, he still tries to make a case for, and he's
Mm-hmm.
making a little bit of a fool of himself, in my opinion, about that. But by and large, they have whoever, different parties. He participated in the Donald Trump interview. Um, you know, um, listened to kind of the answers that he gave, and the same thing with RFK and whoever else. Dean Phillips was one of the primary. Um, anyway, quite a few of these guys in the primaries they had on there.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a much better format and it's a much better way for these guys to kind of get introduced to the public, um, to understand how they act and react in a much more natural environment than a studio or even a
Mm-hmm.
live event, like these rallies that they do and that sort of thing. Anyway, so I think it's going to be um, the last election that we see in this old format,
Yeah.
which is probably a good thing. I would just like to see them cap the amount that can be spent on this thing because I
Yeah.
think that is
Well, what we've got at
obscene.
the Democrat rally, they've got Beyonce and someone else and someone else. I don't know, Jennifer Lopez and this one and
Did
that
you
one.
did you see that on the weekend? There was the crowd was so upset. I can't remember where it was, but obviously they advertised this thing that Beyonce was going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So people showed up for a free Beyonce concert, and then Beyonce just stood there on the stage for like 3 or 4 minutes, saying, "Please vote for Kamala, and she's brilliant, etc." And then she left. You can imagine all those people that showed up. Um, but it shows you what a farce this
Yeah,
thing is. Anyway,
yeah, it's crazy.
it's
So I was thinking, because I don't know how I would decide who to vote for if I was there and had to vote for someone and all of this. I was thinking about what qualities would make a good president. Like, what would you want them to be? And I was trying to list a few of the things that I think like would be important for someone to serve me or serve the people. And I was just thinking, number one would be honesty, which we don't see a lot of.
oh,
Honesty and maybe
yeah.
integrity. I don't know if those are two separate things. Integrity might be separate, which again, I don't know. I struggle to see that in either candidate. The honesty I see in Donald Trump for sure. I think he's like ridiculously honest. Then I thought about wanting to serve the people, which I feel like very few politicians have that wanting to serve the people, not themselves. And then what were the other ones? Intelligence, which comes up a lot, and we speak about it a lot. And then having a plan that can be executed, because it feels like there's a lot of talk among politicians, but not any action. So those were kind of like the five or six. I don't know. There's the things I was thinking about that I feel like a president needs to have, or a presidential candidate. And I'm thinking like, does anyone actually tick all those boxes?
So I think you're 100% correct. A lot of people, people who are a lot closer to this and know a lot more, openly and blatantly come out and said that Kamala Harris is stupid. I mean, I can point you to a whole bunch of commentators, Americans, well-respected people that have said that. So they're making no bones about it. So I agree with that
Yeah,
100%. You have to look for intelligence. The honesty and the integrity thing, there's so many things in life that we have talked about, and kind of like the way that you would expect everybody to live
yeah,
their life. But we're at that point where when we're talking about politicians, we assume and expect them to, yeah, they don't really um, live those values,
yeah.
or that we give them a pass because, well, you can't deal with a dictator and be honest,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever the excuses that we come up with. You know, that doesn't excuse the integrity. But
Yeah.
if you remove honesty, can you still have integrity? I don't think so.
Well, the one thing I
So there's
liked about Donald Trump saying on the Joe Rogan podcast, he was talking about one of the policies that he would change, which had something to do with building businesses and how they get stopped by the environmental committees at all these levels or
yes,
whatever. And Joe Rogan was pushing him to say, why do the environmental committees or consultants keep doing this? And Trump was saying, well, it's for financial gain because they make more money the longer they draw it out. And he said in the same sentence, he's like, if it was me, I would be doing the same thing as a businessman. Like, he's not saying that what they're doing is horrific or they shouldn't be doing it. He's like, I would do the same thing. But one of the policies that I'll implement so that they can't do it is X, Y, Z. So it was kind of like saying, which is maybe not integrous, is I would also be taking as much money from these people as I could because I'm a businessman. But
so
he's honest about it.
he's honest about it, but you've got to separate the two. The one is a
Yeah.
government agency or department
Mm.
that has a mandate to look after X, Y, and Z. And you have to be as efficient as possible. You have to, kind of um, make sure that the laws are adhered to or applied, and nothing more, nothing
Mm-hmm.
less.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I feel it's incorrect to compare that to a business where you have
Yeah.
an incentive to do things to make more money out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Look, there are so many examples or cases where we can look at where this thing about kind of looking at government like you would look at a business is
Yeah.
so incorrect.
Yeah.
And the status that have been assigned to these government officials, etc., etc. Well, I just look in our country. I mean, that is becoming a minister, a deputy minister, a director general, a mayor, a deputy mayor, and I suppose that there's a whole host of other kind of functions that you can look at. That is your ticket to becoming um, rich,
Mm-hmm.
um, control over people,
And access to a ton of things. Yeah.
access to,
Mm.
exactly, which is so not what the job is about.
Mm.
So I feel like, you have to seriously look, and that's why I'm really excited. Javier Milei did that when he became the president of Argentina. He closed down government departments, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
he brought down inflation from 25% to kind of like it's sitting at 5% a month on month inflation now, which is a hell of an improvement. The
Yeah.
knock-on effect of that is that unemployment shot up. Okay. So let's say, for example, I can't remember the exact figures,
Yeah.
but let's say unemployment is now double what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But how else are you going to get rid? And I think that that is the big thing that people in the US are sitting with. Listen, if Donald Trump wins and he lets Elon Musk lose to cut the inefficiencies and he kind of applies anything similar to what he did at X, like
Mm-hmm.
firing 75%, then the unemployment number is going to, well, if you have a bunch of leeches
Yeah.
just sitting there, not doing the best job that they can, I mean, do they deserve to have jobs or not?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel that the sooner you come in and apply those kind of metrics, and then you deal with that problem, well, force people to go out and kind of be more productive, become a better version of you.
Yeah.
Um, so um, I honestly feel like the government departments, we should run government completely differently. At the
Yeah.
moment, we've given them all the power. So how and why did we end up with this political system? Well, just kind of like high level history here is we we all were serfs, kind of working for whoever owned the land, whoever was the monarch, that kind of system.
Yeah.
So we didn't have a say. We just kind of hoped that the king would be a good guy and that it would be in his interest to treat the rest of us reasonably okay and not to take too much of our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that's how we had no say in terms of the foreign policy, in terms of any of these things and so on. And then we got to the Enlightenment where we kind of said, my my time and my skill and my labor is mine. To sell it to whoever wants to buy it at a reasonable, fair price and so on. That's how we kind of ended up here. And then at some point we ended up with this kind of so-called democracy thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about it, we go out and we vote every 4, 5 years. And then for the rest of the time, you have absolutely no input into
Yeah.
whatever these clowns go and do.
Yeah.
And those clowns, I'm not just talking about those so-called elected officials, but I'm talking about all the layers down,
Mm-hmm.
from like, all of these different levels of hierarchies that we kind of, so in South Africa, we have um, municipal, and then we have province, and then we have federal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we all have these kind of different, and there are so many bureaucrats sitting along all of these levels.
Yeah.
That is why it's so difficult to root out these problems that we have with career politicians.
Yeah.
Politicians are supposed to serve the people.
We say that a lot.
Doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
That is not how politicians view themselves.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a stupid system. But we're stuck here. We're stuck
For
here.
now. For
In
now, we're stuck
so
here.
so one of the really cool questions I came across for a next edition of I've been thinking I'm collecting questions, um, and I was listening to a podcast where Mark Andreessen said that one of the things that he really enjoy about Elon Musk is Elon Musk has this question that he asks people, what did you accomplish this week?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's not what did you do this week? How hard did you work this week? It's a very simple question. What did you accomplish this week?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, wow, what a brilliant question, It is something that I want to ask myself more often now. And if we treat ourselves like that, if we ask ourselves that question, what did I accomplish this week? And then I can obviously also make it a what did I accomplish this month and what did I accomplish this year in terms of from a personal point of view and so on.
Yeah, it's a nice question.
But I feel like if we pay a little bit more attention to that in terms of what did I accomplish versus what did I do,
Yeah.
because there's lots of room and space to fuck around there. In terms of, oh, you know what, I worked 12 hours on Monday and then I worked so hard. I was so busy on whatever and so on. But busy is not necessarily productive.
Yeah.
Anyway, and how do I tie that together with kind of these governments and so on? They're busy all the time.
But
I mean,
what are
they're
they
flying
actually
from one
doing?
place to the next place, and shaking
Yes.
hands here and kind of posing for a photo there and doing an interview there. That's just busy work. They don't really accomplish anything
Yeah.
in terms of from what we the people that
Yeah.
they are supposed to serve. Um, anyway, so that's just kind of like um, a nice question and a nice reminder that I'm hoping to make part of my daily routine to ask myself
Yeah.
that question.
Might add it to my journal. I was trying to think about how it's different because I've got in my journal prompts the great things that happened today or great thing that happened today. So
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of the things that I write in there, which are sometimes very like nothing, like very like, oh, I went
Yes.
for a 5K walk, which I do every day. So I don't know if that's great
Yes.
anymore.
No, that's not great anymore.
I need something
No.
that is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
What did I accomplish? I'll think about that one.
I'll give you another one to also think about. What do you love about what you do for a living? So instead of asking somebody, what do you do for a living?
Yeah.
It's asking somebody, what do you love about what you do for a living? That also spoke to me. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
I find that kind of easier to answer.
I was gonna say I think I have an answer for that.
But honestly, I find that easier to answer than the what do you do for a living?
Yeah. Interesting.
Because so um, I'm excited about that because if you can't come up with anything, I think yes, you have to question what you do.
Yeah.
But because I have kind of like a handful of things that I can tell you about what I love, about what I do for a living, it's just like, okay, cool, maybe I'm still enjoying my job.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm still doing the right thing.
That's quite encouraging, actually.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. It's not
Nice.
supposed to trip you
Yeah.
up at the question. It is, anyway,
It's a nice way of looking at it because I think there are days
yeah,
that I wake up and I think, why do I do what I do? But when you ask that question, I had a few things that popped into my head straight away. So I think, oh, that's why I do what I do.
yeah,
Okay. Cool.
correct.
Well, that's a nice happy note to end another
Yes.
interesting discussion on. Thanks, Herman.
Uh, thanks, Ali.